Hey, Veach, you hear
Hey,
something?
yeah.
Good. We're ready to start whenever you are.
All right. Well, it's certainly exciting weekend for us. Thrilled to welcome 6 new draft selections to the Kingdom. Currently working through some free agent contracts after the draft, and won't be able to comment on those guys. But once we get those guys finalized, we'll certainly be able to discuss those guys and how they fit into the grand scheme of things. But again, really exciting weekend for us. Definitely want to say thank you to my entire scouting staff. Again, just a tremendous job all year. The coaching staff, all the IT people, everyone involved in this whole process here. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, and these guys are the best at what they do. So again, couldn't be more excited by the outcome of this draft, and looking forward to getting these guys into the facility next week and kicking off this freaking mini camp soon and seeing these guys in action. So with that, I'll open up and take your questions.
Let's go first to Sam Mellinger. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Brett. This isn't necessarily draft specific, but I'm just wondering, does the 17th game, does that change at all your approach to draft, free agency, just kind of roster building in general?
I mean, it just puts more of an emphasis on what we already know, and that's just the battle of attrition. And you know, it's so hard to stay healthy in this league, and you can have a good team, but you know, we saw it last year. If you can't make it to the end and you don't have, enough depth, it's certainly going to come into play. So we're always looking for ways to build that depth, and we put a high priority on our practice squad. And that's why I think when you look at our roster during the season, we're always active in regards to changing out our practice squads and keeping an eye on that. But it's just going to put more emphasis on making sure that we have guys in place to fulfill that next man up mentality and continue to identify young prospects that can quickly grow and develop and be ready for when their number's called.
Let's go next to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Brett, just wanted to ask you about the one trade you guys made for Noah Gray to trade up with the Jets. I was wondering if you just walk through why it was necessary to go there, and then just your comments on why you wanted the player so badly.
Well, I didn't think, I shouldn't say we as a staff, I wasn't sure that this tight end class was super deep. Certainly everyone had pits there at the top of the board. I think that there was talent, though, throughout the draft. These guys were a little bit more, some guys were primary blockers, some guys had a receiving skill set. And early on, we took a liking to Noah Gray and just saw him as a really unique inside slot receiver, H-back, fullback. He's a little undersized for, being an inline player, but it's so hard to replace Travis when he's not in the game because he has such a unique skill set. And Noah has a similar, again, you don't want to compare anyone to Travis Kelce, but Noah has a unique skill set as a slot, bigger tight end receiver. Looking at the board and kind of working through that, Josh Kaindoh was a guy that, we were certainly interested in. And once we fulfilled that kind of need there at defensive end with Josh, we quickly looked at the board and, we knew that we wouldn't be able to get up all that high. So once we got into that range where we felt we can do a flopping of picks that would get us up, we were going to be aggressive. So we just had to wait. So we were literally waiting for 15, 20, 25 picks to go by. We had 2 different deals in place. We actually had the Jets at first, they weren't committing to the move. I think there was a team behind them that said they would commit to the move. And we had just said that if our guy was still on the board, we'd be interested. Once Jets got on the clock, they called us back and they said they would be interested, but we were really identifying that trade probably about 20 picks ahead. We were just waiting. We just couldn't get into that range. We didn't want to surrender a pick. We could have moved up even higher by just surrendering a flat pick, but we wanted to work in volume, and we identified a few teams that were willing to swap picks, and we were okay with shifting down later and allowing a team to come up higher later if we can move up a little in that 5th. But that was a guy that is, again, as soon as we selected Josh Kaindoh, we had our eyes locked on. We called Josh and we welcomed him to the Kingdom. And then as soon as we got off the phone, we were back in the draft room on the phone, calling every team to see how we can flop picks, get back up there and get Noah.
Let's go next to Sarin Petro. Go ahead, Sarin.
Brett, the second round, grabbing a center, you guys did a lot of work, obviously, in filling that position. you talked about kind of a sweet spot being that mid-second, maybe down to like mid-third or at least top of the third. Was there any conversation about maybe trading down and the fact that it was, you've turned that offensive line strength into or the offensive line position into kind of a strength now to then go and put more resources into it? I would think that, maybe you didn't think Creed was going to be there and maybe that changed how you were going to do the dynamics.
Yeah, we were fielding calls, I would say about 6 to 8 picks before our selection at 58 and at 62. We had a couple teams offer potential trade down scenarios. And they never really materialized though. And then once we got on the clock and typically when teams call you, the deals are good. When you call teams, the deals are bad. Right. So early on before 58, we had some calls and we were monitoring some situations and we were potentially open to doing that. As those 5 or 6 picks went by, the one team kind of backed out on what they proposed, and then there was no calls. And at that point, again, once you start making calls, then that means you're willing to take less in value. And then factor that in with having a guy like Nick Bolton on the board at 58, great player. And then again at 62, Creed Humphrey. I mean, the value was just way too good. Certainly both those players we're really excited about and very fortunate to get.
Let's go next to Herbie Tiopi. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Brett, good morning.
Good morning, Herbie. How you doing?
Hey, I'm well, thanks. You guys didn't draft a safety this year. How much of that is a sign of confidence? A Matthew extension could be done sooner than later.
Well, look, I had mentioned earlier before, once we get through the free agency process and the draft, we'll sit down and last year, we were able to get a lot of our veteran players done during the summer and enough can't be said about Tyron and how we feel about him and his role both on and off the field here. But look, I mean, I had said earlier that once we were able to execute the Orlando Brown trade, that it really just opened us up to taking the best player available. And that was kind of the mentality we worked this entire weekend. We were just going to stay true to the board. We felt that, once free agency ends, you really like to go in the draft knowing that you can go out there and play in a game. And so again, once the left tackle position was filled, we felt like we can stay true to the board, take the best player available, because again, perceived needs this year, has no indication of what the need will be next year. And we're trying to build continuity and build for the long haul here. And again, as I mentioned, hopefully something gets done with Orlando. So you have him under contract for a while, Joe Tooney under contract for a while, and now Creed Humphrey under contract for a while. So if you work with that mentality, take the best player available, you're going to have these guys under contract for 4 or 5 years. And again, once we were able to solidify that left tackle position, we really just stayed true to the board and took the best player available at every position.
Next to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett, how you doing today?
Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Good. Hey, Brett, was just wondering when the plan for the offensive line started to come together. I mean, I can't imagine that you got together the day after the Super Bowl and said, hey, we got to do something here. So just curious if you can sort of take us through a timeline, a little bit of what your thinking was as the time went on and then into free agency and even through this weekend when you got 2 players. And Brad, I'll have one more question as well.
Well, I mean, really, I would say that the plan had always been in place. And even at the start of the season, Austin Ryder was going to be a free agent. And, certainly Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz were both getting up there in regards to years experience and playing in the league. So I think our eye was always on that as our college guys are on the road. And as we started to meet in free agency in that process and even before Fish got hurt, when we met, I think in early December or late November, our blueprint early on was, we're going to really solidify some offensive line play in regards to tackle depth, interior depth, and where can we find value in free agency. Now, certainly that plan got put into ultra gear after Fish got hurt, and then it was made aware to us that Mitch was going to get off-season surgery. It was on our radar the whole time, but I think the level of urgency just really picked up as soon as Eric got hurt and we got word that Mitch was going to get surgery. So again, I would say that was probably going to be our priority anyway in the offseason. We probably doubled down a little bit, knowing that some of the veterans that we anticipated back wouldn't be back either.
Okay, thanks. And also, and I know you said up at the top that you really weren't ready to talk about at least some of your undrafted guys that you signed. Does that go for all the guys? Because there's one I had a particular question about. Would that go for all of them?
Yeah, I mean, typically once we get them under contract, these guys are going to come in here and have to get a physical, and then we'll get them under contract.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but once those guys sign,
Okay.
we'll certainly make them available, and we'll be happy to talk about them.
Fair.
Let's go next to Mick Schaefer. Go ahead, Mick.
Hey, Brett, just wondering, Trey Smith in the 6th round, what kind of value you think you got from him at that point?
Yeah, obviously we feel we got tremendous value, extremely talented player, great person too, smart. So listen, there's been a lot of talk about Trey and his fall, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't really want to speak on in regards to his conditions, but I think Mike Bergonzi was on the other day and he spoke about it. We did a lot of work with him, in particular, Mike Monaco. He has, I'll probably defer to Rick on this because I don't want to screw up the language, but, he had a situation he was going through and he tried some different medications and some of them worked, some of them didn't, but really put a lot of faith and trust in Rick and in his training staff. And then I would say that of all the players throughout this draft process, I don't think I spoke to Mike Monaco more about than Trey Smith. We had a ton of dialogue with him, and Mike was involved a lot in that process, not just with me and my staff and Rick and his staff, but also the people at the University of Tennessee, Trey's agent, Trey himself. So, Mike did a really good job of making sure he had all the information, and again, safety's the most important thing for us. And, I would say that in general, we're probably one of the more conservative staffs there are in regards to any gray. We're probably taking people off our board. So I knew early on that when Mike thought he had an idea of how to fix this, I thought that we were really on to something, because again, any area gray, we're usually taking the player off the board because we don't want to put players in that position here in Kansas City. So feel good about the work we did on him, and again, if everything works out, you're getting a guy that obviously would have been drafted a lot higher, got tremendous upside with him. So we're looking forward to getting him here and having Mike and our trainers work with him and getting him up to speed and seeing if we can tap into all that potential.
Looks like we've got 3 hands up. We'll go right down the line, starting with Todd Lebo. Go ahead, Todd.
Hey, Brett, I wonder if you have any clarity yet on what the next couple of weeks will look like for these rookies, if you're going to get to have them here, have in person, and then if you've had any conversations with the leadership of your veteran team on whether or not they're going to be virtual or showing up for the OTAs yet.
Yeah. So as far as, the conversation with the leadership and the OTAs, Coach Reed's handling that with Pat and Tyron and those guys. And obviously our staff was just, working on the draft. As far as I know, and these rookies should be in here next week, and we should get this rookie camp off next week. So anticipating all these guys arriving here Wednesday, Thursday, getting a physical, getting geared up and getting out there and going through the first install as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs.
We'll go next to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Brett. When we talked to Ryan Nutt on Saturday, he mentioned that Powell was a guy that could be more of a post-up player. I'm just wondering, did you identify that as maybe a need for you guys, or was he just sort of the next receiver on your board and that happens to be his qualities?
It kind of worked out in both regards. He was, again, going back to the mindset we worked all weekend. He was the best player available, but he, ironically enough, did fill that kind of post-up position. He's a 6 foot, 210, 212-pound receiver. He's big, strong, physical. The production wise, I mean, he had a monster year this year, but leading up to that, the production wasn't always there. He had some injuries that he dealt with, and obviously Clemson has a lot of talent. This year, he really kind of tapped into, that potential. And if you look at the second half of his season last year, that was good as any wideout in the country. I mean, he was just ripping off big game after big game, and certainly showed what he can do versus Notre Dame and the bowl game versus Ohio State. So love his skill set. And for where we are on our roster with McCole and with Tyreek, he's going to be a great complement, as an X receiver, got big size, really good after the catch, strong player. So just think it's a great fit and great value there. And we're excited to work with him and see how he can add to an already dynamic offense.
And we'll go last to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Brett, thanks for the time as always.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. You'd mentioned you briefly touched on Joshua Kaindoh earlier. But just curious, he's obviously has incredible skills and athleticism, tested through the roof. But how do you kind of feel like he is as far as his development and maturity goes at this point, and how do you kind of visualize him fitting into the DN rotation this year?
Well, this is a prototypical Steve Spagnuolo DN right here. I mean, 6'5", 265, 268, 35 and 3/8 since arm, I think. I mean, he's long, athletic. He has some work to do in regards to his development. So he had an injury a couple of years ago that really put him back. He had an ankle injury, I believe in 19. Was off to a really good, maybe it was 19 or 20. I guess it was 2 years ago. I'm losing track of my years here, but a couple of years ago, he had an ankle injury, was off to a hot start, set him back. And then sometimes those injuries are slow, make it more difficult for you to return. And, he had some lingering effects off that into this season. But again, going back to the medical staff and the work we've done, like the way that that's healed up now. And again, he's a guy that has a ton of potential, but his size, length, and overall skill set is exactly what we're looking for. Great kid, smart, will catch on quick. So we think he'll come in here and fit in right away. And, I think the more he gets to be with Brendan Daly in that defensive line room, we think that talent will come out. But I mean, we're excited to work with him skill set wise. I mean, he has all the tools you look for at that position.
Brett, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thank you, guys.